Good morning, everyone. This is Michael, and we're continuing now with our Ask program on the morning schedule. And next Wednesday in the morning there will be the Science of Triangles, but it will be the evening schedule. And I think, well, let's just see whether one day possibly has to be cut out of that schedule, possibly, well, maybe not any. We'll see how we go. So anyway, this is a vitally important matter. We see how money is spent in the world at this time, and as the Tibetan said, largely for material and personal purposes, because that is how people tend to identify, and that's where their sense of values is. And of course, that's where our educational work comes into the picture, so that we can help to inform about some of the truer facts of life. And people can put their symbolic resources by which we pretty well run the energy factors of our world, the creativity, that is money, put those resources where they will help with the divine plan. Now I'd like to, we're talking about the issue of capital and labor. It is an ongoing big issue, and of course the reason that is so is because it has to do with the division between moon chain humanity, which is under the third ray of economics and has had a much longer time to evolve, and the truer earth chain humanity, which has been more recently, far more recently, individualized, and in Lemurian days and in early Atlantean days. And to put it bluntly, the factor of intelligence which is operative for moon chain humanity takes advantage of the earth chain humanity. We have today the recrudescence of slavery. Amazing. You know, in America we tend to think, well, and in England and in other parts of Europe, that slavery has been handled. But wherever you look, we see people exploiting other people for their labor. So that is a condition that cannot be allowed, and it's the old capital and labor system. Now this, what I'm going to read today is from the Problems of Humanity. I'm going to read mostly about capital, and then the next time that we get together, we'll take up labor. It's in two different sections. So from Problems of Humanity, right around page 70 or so. First of all, it must be recognized that the cause of all world unrest, of the world wars which have wrecked humanity, and the widespread misery upon our planet, can largely be attributed to a selfish group with materialistic purposes who have for centuries exploited the masses and used the labor of mankind for their selfish ends. Well, and we can understand that this selfish group is very intelligent and is somehow aligned with the lords of form, the lords of materialism. You know, it's when you have the power, it's using it in a way that is devoid of the energy of love and unity and helpfulness. He goes on, from the feudal barons of Europe and Great Britain in the Middle Ages, through the powerful business groups of the Victorian era, to the handful of capitalists, national and international, who today control the world's resources, the capitalistic system has emerged and has wrecked the world. The capitalistic system has emerged and wrecked the world. Now, that's a pretty strong statement. This group of capitalists has cornered and exploited the world's resources and the staples required for civilized living. They have been able to do this because they have owned and controlled the world's wealth through their interlocking directorates and have retained it in their own hands. They have made possible the vast differences existing between the very rich and the very poor. I'll just say, when you see the pictures brought to you as videos and as photos of the people living on the garbage heaps in various countries and having to pick through the mounds of garbage to find any kind of thing they could use, including old food that has been thrown away so I can eat. It's extraordinary. Then you see, hundreds and even thousands of dollars spent on meals in the West. So this group has made possible the vast differences existing between the very rich and the very poor. They love money and the power which money gives. It's another way of saying they love their desire body and the fulfillment of those low desires. They have stood behind governments and politicians. They have controlled the electorate. They have made possible the narrow nationalistic aims of selfish politics. They have financed the world businesses and controlled oil, coal, power, light, transportation. Of course, now we have the nuclear energy, which is also under their control. They control publicly or sub rosa the world's banking accounts. So there is this group, and they operate in the shadows, and they do not seek to call attention to themselves, or that would limit their manipulative power. They're coming forward on the lower aspect of the third ray, and we have to be aware of this, otherwise we'll never solve the financial problem as it exists in the world today. The responsibility for the widespread misery to be found today in every country in the world lies predominantly at the door of certain major interrelated groups of businessmen, bankers, executives, of international cartels, monopolies, trusts, and organizations, and directors of huge corporations who work for corporate or personal gain. Of course, sometimes you do find the great philanthropists, and I'm thinking, of how Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and certain others in today's world have invested millions and millions in human welfare. And when you go back to Andrew Carnegie, he certainly made his money who knows how, but there are libraries all over the world, and especially in the United States, because of his interest in learning and in benefiting the people. Okay, going on. So these people, they are not interested in benefiting the public, except insofar that the public demand for better living conditions will enable them, under the law of supply and demand, to provide the goods, the transportation, light, and power which will in the long run bring in heavier financial returns. Exploitation of manpower, the manipulation of the major planetary resources, and the promotion of war for private or business profit are characteristics of their methods. I was reading recently, now I can't remember his name immediately, but he was a man basically who sort of was behind the weaponry and the financing of World War I. He understood how to do it. He made millions and millions through the providing of weaponry to the combatants and other means of war. And it was a purely selfish gesture because of which millions suffered. In every nation, says the Tibetan, such men and organizations responsible for the capitalistic system are to be found. The ramifications of their businesses and their financial grasp upon humanity were, prior to the war, active in every land, and though they went underground during the war, they still exist. Now, there was certainly Germany's relationship to the Krupp financial empire. I don't know all the details of the many alliances which usually show up in a fascistic system, but they were there. Going on, they form an international group, closely interrelated and even more so now, working in complete unity of idea and intention and knowing and understanding each other. These men belonged to both the Allied nations and the Axis powers. We saw how eager there were certain people among the Allies were even to throw democracy away, and how they somehow respected the Axis approach and worked to weaken the resistance of the Allied nations against the Axis powers. Onward, they have worked together before and through the entire period of the war, through interlocking directorates, under false names, and through deceptive organizations aided by neutrals of their own way of thinking. In the book Externalization of the Hierarchy has dealt quite a bit with the blocking effect of the neutral countries that prevented, in the early days, the prevailing of the forces of light through the Allied groups. And they did this simply out of fear, cowardice, and preservation of their own safety and maybe some financial advantage. Today, he says, in spite of the disaster which they have brought upon the world, they are again organized and renewing their methods, even after the Second World War. Their goals remain unchanged. Their international relationships remain unbroken. They constitute the greatest menace which mankind faces today, and I think we have to bring that to our own attention. They control politics. They buy prominent men in every nation. We see this everywhere, of course. They ensure silence through threat, cash, and fear. They amass wealth and buy a spurious popularity through philanthropic enterprise. Their families live soft and easy lives and seldom know the meaning of God-ordained work. They surround themselves with beauty, luxury, and possessions and shut their eyes to the poverty, stark unhappiness, lack of warmth and decent clothing, the starvation and the ugliness of the lives of the millions by whom they are surrounded. They contribute to charities and church agencies as a salve to their consciences or to avoid income taxes. They provide work for countless thousands, but see to it that these thousands receive so small a wage that real comfort, leisure, culture, and travel are impossible. I was going to say, it's quite an indictment. I was, as probably some of you have been, in the Hearst Castle on the shores, or more or less on the shores of the Pacific Ocean, and there is a man who, through tremendous wealth, accumulated to such a degree that you could barely walk through the castle that was so cluttered with collected art and objects of value, and more than one could ever use or need. It's hard to know what makes for the grip of materialism. It's some kind of unique blindness to the second aspect, and when things are taken too far, then you have the brothers of the left-hand path and of the Black Lodge, and he says they are those of unique blindness who have traveled far into the land of distances. So he goes on and says, the above is a terrible indictment. It can, however, be substantiated 1,000 times over. It is breeding revolution and a growing spirit of unrest. The masses of the people in every land are aroused and awakening, and a new day is dawning. A war is starting between the selfish, moneyed interests and the mass humanity who demand fair play and a right share of the world's resources. Well, that's the bad part, and I think we will continue next time with a little rosier look at some of the people who are in the capitalistic system but are far kinder and charitable and are thinking of the welfare of humanity through education and health, largely, and providing economic opportunity. We can't look at any one system, capitalistic, non-capitalistic, and say it is devoid of selfish people or kinder people. But this has so much to do with our discussion of where the money is spent and how we attract the necessary resources. So we'll resume this. Let's see here. Just want to okay. I see I'm in the wrong place. Right. Okay. Oh, goodness. I'm not going to worry about this now. This will have to go. But let's just see if I... yeah. BG. Yeah, I think now we can do it. And it will be next Sunday, the 11th, that we will be working. Okay, 11 August and 19. Okay. Now, let's get to our meditation. And, of course, behind all this is the Tibetan who is informing us of the conditions of which we may have been, for a while, blissfully unaware. But with the communication system being what it is, we do now really become aware, and I don't think that any spiritually inclined person can tolerate the huge and unfair discrepancies. So we realize that the Tibetan wants us to shoulder our responsibilities and to make sacrifices, which are material sacrifices actually, and to give until it hurts, as he says. And this is the way to cultivate our cooperation, taking what we have saved or intended to set aside and actually dedicating it to the Christ and to his hierarchy. So all this is done in the light of the soul, so let's let that soul light into the mind as we think and as we answer the questions and follow up the realizations. The first is to realize the occult law that to those who give shall be given, so that they can give again. That makes sense. That's the law. And we achieve that personality quietness and answer clearly to ourselves in our own words. We answer to the following questions. If money is one of the most important things needed today for spiritual work, what is the factor, I guess he means the main factor, which is at present deflecting it away from the work of the hierarchy? What is my personal attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? What is my personal responsibility in regard to money which passes through my hands? Am I handling it as a disciple of the Masters should handle it? And when I face this hydra head of money, there are 9 heads, we know, and it's one of the material heads that is responsible for a huge glamour under which the majority of human beings still live. Can I deal with it? And do I see whether it has any effect over me? Do I have a method of overcoming its power, potentially over myself? It is a battle, and these are the days when scorpionic humanity, because that is the sign, interestingly, that rules the area of expression of the human monads, when scorpionic humanity must overcome its dweller. It's all part of the reappearance of the Christ process. Now we ponder on the redemption of humanity through the right use of money. And we visualize money as it is in the world today. It is concretized energy. When money is spent, energy is released. It's concretized energy at present largely used for purely material purposes and for the satisfaction, where the individual is concerned, of purely personal desires. But we can also visualize money as a great stream of flowing golden substance passing out of the control of the forces of materialism into the control of the forces of light. So money no longer financing the projects of darkness, and the emphasis upon captivating form, but money for all the things that the Christ and his ashrams are trying to accomplish. And this will eventuate, but the question is, what kind of delay, if any, are we involved in? And then we say the following invocative prayer, focused in our mental concentration and from a heartfelt desire to meet spiritual demands. O Thou, in whom we live and move and have our being, the power that can make all things new, turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world, touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities. I ask that the needed vast sums may be made available. May this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. Then we visualize the work to be done by those groups, those projects which claim our present allegiance, any group which you know is attempting to carry out the hierarchical plan. And through the creative imagination and by an act of the will, see untold and unlimited sums of money pouring into the hands of those who seek to do the Master's work. And then we say aloud with conviction and with emphasis, He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in His name, and with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. remembering at the same time that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So then, we will ask for the flow of money, of resources, in the directions that we think best, and we say to ourselves and then fill in the blank according to what we believe should be supported. I ask for the needed money for and I can demand it because from the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. So we have a manifestational responsibility as the spiritual will and the love of hierarchy and the light of hierarchy pour into our consciousness and the consciousness of our groups. We have a manifestational responsibility. So we close with a careful consideration of our own responsibility to the plan, whether it's money or time or both. We have a responsibility to the divine plan, and we plan our cooperation with hierarchy. And the Tibetan advises us, we have to be practical and realistic, because if we do not give, we may not ask, for we have no right to evoke that which we do not share. So how will we cooperate financially and in terms of time with the hierarchy and its objectives. Now, we attempt to feel true love sweeping through us and have the fixed intention of spreading that love wherever we can, however we can. And we do all this in cooperation with the great teacher, Lord Maitreya, and we pledge our cooperation, and we can be sure that if we are gathered together, 2 or 3, to be with him, he will be with us. Love and money, the 2 aspects of divinity, the second and third, must be put together. So let us say the mantra. We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. And we offer the great Lord that which we have saved to advance the divine plan. So we're careful in thinking of what we can give, and we give as much as we can, knowing there are not so many that understand even the ABC of the divine plan. And as students of the Tibetan, we do understand a little, and we have to bring it to earth as possible. So in every way, soul, mind, desire, action, we attempt to make the divine plan, as much as we can understand it, a reality on the planet and in our environment, and through all those whom we have been given the responsibility to touch. Our lives touch a number of people, and we try to help them realize what the plan is and to cooperate. So love sweeps through us. We attempt to uphold humanity on our planet. It's going to take a lot of work now, and we cannot let it happen as happened before World War II, We have to be vigilant, on guard, ready, so that humanity may move in the direction of redemption. Whatever groups you want to give to external, esoteric, and internal, just as long as the result of their work is the advancement of some aspect of the divine plan. So we sound the Om 3 times, precipitating love wisdom into the worlds of the threefold personality. Friends, I want to thank you for gathering here together to meditate. We have heavy responsibilities these days, inner and outer, and we will be known by the hierarchy according to how we carry out these responsibilities. And all of this, you know, is to somehow follow the Christ in his great benevolent intention for humanity. So we'll gather again on Wednesday morning for the Science of Triangles. Full moons are coming up, and we'll use those opportunities. And meanwhile, we'll strengthen our inner life so that we can be more and more outwardly effective. Love and many blessings from Tuya and myself, and from all the groups that are working ahead in affiliation to bring about the manifestation of the divine plan.
He arose, glory.